All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring the fascinating and honestly, often socially exhausting reality of being a highly intelligent person. We're going to unpack the unique struggles that come with having a brilliant mind and why sometimes being incredibly smart can feel, well, incredibly isolating.
So tell me if this sounds familiar. Have you ever felt like the awkward nerd standing entirely on the outside of a conversation, just wondering why your brain feels like a massive barrier to human connection? I mean, we've all seen that movie trope, right? The genius giving a wide-eyed blank stare while everyone waits for a normal response. Or maybe blurting out something totally cringe at exactly the wrong time. But while Hollywood uses that for cheap laughs, the real-world experience is far more nuanced and internally frustrating. There is a very real core of truth to it. But before we get deep into those struggles, we really have to get on the same page about what we're actually talking about here. True intelligence is a highly complex, multidimensional way of processing the world. It's all about how gifted someone is at taking apart abstract concepts and building upon them to form a massive, interconnected understanding of everything. It's a whole different operating system, something even the brilliantly minded Stephen Hawking pointed out couldn't possibly be reduced to just a simple IQ test score. So, if it's not just a number on a page, what actually happens when this massive processing power enters a standard everyday social setting? Well, that brings us to our first major point, the IQ versus EQ trade-off. Because life is all about trade-offs, and this is exactly where the internal conflict begins.
Research points to a totally fascinating phenomenon. A 2015 study by Davidson actually highlighted a very real trade-off between immense analytical power and emotional intuition. Basically, the study showed that people with a remarkably high IQ tend to have a lower EQ, or emotional intelligence quotient. And since your EQ is literally the exact thing that helps you form close relationships and navigate tiny social nuances, you can start to see why social awkwardness isn't just some unfair stereotype. It's an actual structural reality for so many highly intelligent people.
And a huge part of how this lower EQ manifests is through what we call paralysis by analysis. Imagine your brain seeing every single angle, every pro, every con, and every conceivable possibility simultaneously. It's completely overwhelming. You end up paralyzed by this intense need to always know the absolutely most correct answer. There is just so much input flooding in that it completely clogs your output. So what happens? You literally freeze up in everyday social moments because your lightning-fast brain is trying to calculate the perfect, flawless response.
Which leads us directly into our next section, the small talk trap, a totally exhausting and time-wasting hurdle. You've probably heard the quote, great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. If you've ever found chatting about a neighbor's brand new lawn flamingo or the weekend sports game to be completely exhausting, this perfectly sums up why. Highly intelligent people simply aren't wired for what they see as the mundane details of life. Instead, they live in the abstract. They intensely crave deep, thought-provoking discussions about massive ideas and concepts. Small talk isn't just a little boring to them, it physically drains their energy.
And on the rare occasions when they do participate in those casual conversations, they are unbelievably careful with their words. Because you want to provide rock-solid, logic-backed conclusions, you might pause for these long, agonizing silences. Now, to you, you were just looking at a topic from every possible angle before opening your mouth. It's just a computation period. But to the outside world, that heavy silence makes you come across as overly serious, totally reserved, or just weirdly socially awkward. And all that friction naturally leads to our third section, struggling to find your crowd, and the massive challenge of finding true friends. Look, failing at small talk and taking way too long to answer a simple question aren't just minor quirks. They actually scale up into a much broader, deeply isolating problem. There is a very real pipeline here from being perceived as too smart to finding yourself completely alone. It starts with just struggling in those basic social situations. Then your peers start to feel intimidated. They might feel like they can't relate to you or they aren't smart enough, so they just quietly back away. In response, you stop going out and you throw yourself entirely into academic or work pursuits. Eventually, the severe imbalance between work and human connection leads directly to profound loneliness and unhappiness. Because, hey, highly intelligent people are still people, and people get lonely. When finding true friends becomes an absolute uphill battle, you might find yourself desperately wondering if shrinking your intellect is the only way to cure that isolation. You actually catch yourself asking, if my intelligence is what's driving people away, should I just pretend to be less smart so I can finally be accepted? But it gets heavier.
let's move to section 4, the burden of expectations, and navigating the immense pressure to succeed. Completely compounding that social isolation is the immense weight of the expectations that your peers, and honestly your own mind, put directly on your shoulders. It's like with great intelligence comes great expectation. Because your mind constantly craves new intellectual stimulation, it literally always has the munchies for a new discovery, you fall into this brutal cycle of overwork. Every single time a friend casually jokes about you getting another perfect 4.0 or being employee of the month yet again, a little part of your brain tells you that you absolutely must maintain that standard. You end up pushing yourself to constantly prove your intellect, which just supercharges your perfectionism and creates an incredibly toxic, disproportionate fear of failure. Okay, so how do we handle this? That brings us to our final section, embracing your unique mind and defining who you are. It can be unbelievably disheartening when other people define you simply as a walking brain or a test score and never even try to get to know the person behind the intellect. But the absolute biggest reality we want to emphasize in this explainer is this. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the way your mind processes the world. Your intelligence is not a bug in your social software. It's just a totally different operating system. Being smart isn't always a walk in the park, but you absolutely cannot let others define your worth based solely on your intellect or some perceived social awkwardness. At the end of the day, others don't validate who you are. Only you do. So, the ultimate takeaway here is that you should never, ever sacrifice your amazing intellect just for the sake of easy small talk or basic acceptance. Dumbing yourself down is absolutely not the answer. Instead, you have to seek out your sphere. You are naturally drawn to other people in the exact same intelligence bracket as you. They might be rare, and yeah, they might be really hard to find, but rest assured they are out there, waiting for someone exactly like you. So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to carry with you as you navigate the beautiful complexity of your own intelligence. How will you stop apologizing for your analytical mind and instead use it to find the people who truly